the Electoral College. That's right. I think the way democracy works is when our elected officials come to ask everybody for their vote. And that means getting rid of the Electoral College. So I'm big on this.
Senator Elizabeth Warren is getting big applause lines on the campaign trail for her proposal to do away with the Electoral College entirely. The fact that a Democrat is calling for this should not be that big of a surprise. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won almost 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. In 2000, Al Gore won 500,000 more votes than George W. Bush. But because of the Electoral College, of course, they both lost the election. As journalist Tim Murphy pointed out on Twitter, and I've been thinking about it ever since, quote, extremely wild, Republicans have won the popular vote exactly once in AOC's lifetime. We're talking nearly 30 years. Senator Warren is pushing back against decades of minority rule in her proposal, something that seems to have become a theme in this Democratic primary. Joining me now to talk about it, Aisha Mooney Mills, a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and Sam Seder, MSNBC contributor and host of The Majority Report. What do you think of the Electoral College line?
Oh, I love it. I mean, I've been saying...
I think that's the view among most Democrats.
Well, here's what I think about the line, because here's what I think about the woman. I think that it is fantastic that Elizabeth Warren continues to push the policy conversations in a very bold way. She is forcing everybody else in the field to actually have real conversations about the tangible way that our structures, our systems, our government work. That's what I love about it.
You know, there's two things happening, right? So there's like substantive conversation about policies, right? Like I would pass this bill or not. And then there's this conversation happening about the deeper democratic structure of the country, right? Like the filibuster is one of them, the Electoral College, the Supreme Court. And I think there's a lot of energy there among Democrats for that kind of deeper conversation.
Right. And it's also, I mean, it's a deeper conversation in terms of the structure of the government, but it's also, there's been an interesting change over the years in terms of Democrats. Not only, I think, has the Democratic Party, from a policy perspective, become more aggressively to the left, but there is almost like a partisanship, like a willingness to engage in a fight.
Yes.
And hold the Republican Party to account for their attacks on the structure of our government and our body politic writ large, which I think is also equally as unique, at least in the past.
I totally agree. But of course, the concern, right, is that that's a race to the bottom. Right. I mean, the concern you saw people have been talking. Pete Buttigieg has talked about court packing. Right. Like maybe we should put a bunch more Supreme Court justices. And the concern is that, like, right, everyone starts to pull at the same thread and you end up unraveling.
I don't think it's a race to the bottom if we have a real conversation about voting rights and voter suppression in this country. Right. And tackle that head on. I think that that's a good thing. I think the structural piece of it, to me, is what we often miss with platitudes. And what's going to happen come the first debates this summer is you're going to see Elizabeth Warren get out there and say, here are my ideas for how we make America work for everybody and is fair. And a lot of the other candidates are not going to have a lot of substance around that. So I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a race to the bottom to actually have conversations about how we structurally change this nation in a way that everyone gets to benefit.
I mean, I think that's correct. But I also say, like, I mean, I acknowledge that there is a sort of like bringing a knife to a knife fight.
Yes, right.
And the fact is that for decades, the Democrats have said, we're not going to bring that knife to the knife fight. And that strategy hasn't worked either. And so, you know, often what a bully needs is to be shown that this works two ways. And so what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And that type of strategically, if you want to stop that race to the bottom, one of the ways to stop it is to indicate to the others that we're going to win.
Right. And that's actually a very interesting idea, particularly when it comes to things like the filibuster or court packing, right? That like actually strategically to sort of go maximalist yourself gives you a sort of mutually assured destruction, like compact of stasis, right?
Begins to put stakes. It begins to put stakes on.
But here's my pushback on that, which is that part of the issue here, right, is like, and I am 100% believe one person, one vote, popular elections to determine who the president is. What, you can't do anything about it. You're going to get a constitutional amendment. Like in some ways, this is the fundamental problem as we have this ideas primary is like the structures themselves are so ossified, the mismatch between what's being said, which is like, hey, how about the winner get to be a president?
So
and what you can do is so
like,
far.
Is it 270 essentially? You got to get enough states involved in this. You say we're going to ratify our own state constitutions,
right?
And you got to get enough of those states lined up where you get to 270 in terms of the Electoral College.
Colorado just did this, by the way. Jared Polis signed that into law.
And so there are actually several of them lining up right now. Not at 270 just yet, but over 200. So the question becomes, so here's where I fall in all of this. I don't think that we're hesitant to kind of go big and go bold just because it seems like, you know, the arc is really, really, really long. I would be not surprised if 6, 12 months from now, we see a bunch of other states jump on board and
Right.
say, you know what,
Yeah.
this is a good idea.
But it's got to go somewhere,
because
right?
Elizabeth Warren started the conversation.
Yeah.
Right, but even if you don't get to the National Popular Vote Compact,
Right.
even if that doesn't get there, my point is that you're indicating that we're holding you to account, that we're aware of what's going on,
Right.
that we're aware of the inequities in the context of our structures, and so that it may not be this solution, it may be another solution,
Right.
but the party is ready to make that jump.
And what that lets us do, to your point, is it lets us actually start to say, this person, Donald Trump, who was just elected, is not legitimate.
Well, the other, I mean, to me, the bigger thing here, which is what the crux of the crisis of the country is majority rule. Like, are we going to have majority rule or not? And we, as you know, in 30 years, we've had a lot of not majority rule.
It's an issue in the Senate, too.
Aisha Moody Mills and Sam Cedar, thank you for joining. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.